Welcome to the show, everybody. It's Monday, March 21st, 2021. Today, some big news in the NFL. We'll be breaking down your Elite Eight matchups and some key moves around the NBA.
Now let's dive into it.
There goes that man's jockstrap. Oh my God, did you see that?
America's team? Yeah, right.
Oh, baby, it's a big day in sports. There's nothing like battling it out with your teammates all season long to go win a championship.
Green Bay's got it this year.
Huge move for them. I think it's going to be a game changer.
We have a lot to talk about this busy week in the sports world. Welcome to the In a League of Their Own podcast.
Hey, how's it going today?
Oh, it's going, man. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Big weekend in the sports world. Where do you want to dive into it right away?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like there's a lot always going on in the NFL, given that it's technically their off season. It seems like there's the most talk around that. I know kind of one of the big storylines we've been following is the Deshaun Watson news. What do you have on that?
So my Deshaun Watson news, his cases now are up to 19 from 16 that was previously what was happening. Some big news over the weekend. It looks like the lawyers between all of the parties and Deshaun Watson, looks like they battled it out big time in court, made some headlines. And then he is now accused of deleting messages, trying to settle outside of court type of thing with some hush money.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, money does talk. Although in this case, I hope that if he is guilty, that that stuff doesn't get swept under the rug just because he's got some stacks he can throw around. So, I mean, the fact that he is trying to settle privately with money cases kind of doesn't look good for him, because obviously if he knew he wasn't in the wrong, he would just say, nope, I'm going to fight it in court, and because I believe I did nothing wrong. So, I mean, it was kind of quiet for a while. I know last week, later in the week when we talked about it, it's like, oh, it's been kind of quiet. Maybe that's good news for him. And now the first thing that comes out after that, it definitely doesn't look good for him. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that works out.
Yeah, we do hope justice is served, definitely, if he is guilty of what he is accused of. How about some other huge news about some NFL QBs? Russ Wilson still on the move. Looks like the Eagles are now potentially in the mix after the moves the other day with the 49ers and the Dolphins. They have that 12 spot, I believe, right?
The Eagles?
Yes.
Yeah, they got the 12 spot from the Dolphins trade with the 49ers.
Okay, yeah, and I've seen some reports that it looks draft night potentially is where he will be on the move, depending what the Eagles may have up their sleeve with some trade options here. What do you think about that?
I mean, kind of like we've talked about before, the Bears offered 3 first-round picks and 2 players in Akeem Hicks and Will Fuller, which are two pretty solid vets to have on your team at a cornerback in the line to kind of reface your defense, which is kind of what Seattle needs on the defensive end. So it's going to take, again, like you said, some draft night moves, maybe some post-draft stuff of putting deals together, of acquired guys from the draft. If Chicago still wants to go after him, I think that's the way they do it. Now you said the Eagles kind of throw their name into the hat, which will be kind of interesting. I know that they're kind of leaning towards Jalen Hurts, although it's just been kind of paraphrased from some coaches and from some insiders. No coaches or really anybody's ever come out yet and said Jalen Hurts is QB1 and that's it. So obviously they're open to some outside competition, whether that is Justin Fields or another quarterback in the draft. If the Eagles decide to trade up even from 12, I don't see Fields falling to 12 to be able to get him there unless, I mean, good for them if he does, but we'll see that when that happens. But yeah, as more teams throw their name in the hat as far as the Russell Wilson talk, I think that makes his value go up even more, which is good for Seattle as more teams want to be involved in that.
And if you look at this whole situation, it's kind of like Russell knows his value, and the Seahawks are kind of, hey, we kind of got you where we want you type of thing, where like if you look at it, Russell Wilson's been in the top 3 in the league of times sacked every single year of his career besides 2. So he's getting sacked a ton. And the worst record that he's ever posted was 9-7. And that was in the 17-18 season. And he's won a Super Bowl. So he deserves, I feel like, with what he's proved already, that he deserves to call some shots. And he wanted more O-line. He wanted AB. Seattle says no. Seattle doesn't really make any moves in the free agency to bring in anybody else. Do you think he's fed up? I mean, if you were Russell, where would you want to land?
I mean, there's a lot of markets in the NFL right now that could use another quarterback. I know with the Dolphins giving up their number 3 pick, that kind of gives the nod to Tua as kind of being their guy there. Was that one of the 4 teams that Russ said he'd be interested in? Was it Saints, Chicago, Dallas, and Raiders? Those are the 4 teams.
Yeah, I believe so.
And then I guess kind of going through those boxes again, Dallas signing Dak to a historic deal. Don't really see them going after Wilson there. I guess the next 2 markets would then be the Raiders and the Saints, which I know the Saints are kind of in that top 3 of cap space trouble this year, as far as not being able to re-sign anybody. They're going to be kind of having to establish a new identity after Drew Brees left. They're going to be going from a divisional playoff team to, who knows, maybe they don't make the playoffs. Maybe they have a sub 500 year with Drew Brees leaving and them having trouble with cap space and being able to keep people. So in that case, don't really see that being a fit for Russ then, if they don't really have a lot to offer, unless they go out and get rid of a bunch of guys and free up cap space, which you can't get rid of half of your team to bring one guy in, because Russell isn't going to come in and make that team good when you lose half your guys.
Russ and Michael Thomas, though, that could be a crazy connection. Alvin Kamara too, but like you said, them having cap issues. Jameis Winston having LASIK surgery done so you can finally see. Who knows how good he could be? I mean, look at what he did in Florida. Look at what he's done in his career, being like partially blind out there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, think what he can do when he can see.
Yeah.
I know they signed Taysom Hill to that 4-year, $140 million, all years voidable. And Sean Payton, I do believe, has came out and said it's going to be between Winston and Taysom Hill. But I can almost see them running the same type of offense that they have already, where Taysom's already came in and played quarterback on some plays already.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like they're just going to keep it the same and move forward. But then, like you were saying about the 4 teams that were interested, I do believe like all teams now are potentially in on Russell Wilson at this point. So like, as besides those like 4 teams, some of them are still part of the deal. Continue on. Where would you go if you were Russ?
Yeah, so I guess kind of doing a process of elimination. Obviously, it comes down to, I think, not Oakland, Las Vegas and Chicago are kind of going to be his 2 leaning points, unless another team makes some moves around the draft to try to put together a package to go get Russ too. So that'll be interesting to see a wild card team out of left field to, hey, we want Russ. But right now it kind of looks like the Raiders and the Bears are kind of the 2 teams that would be the landing spots for him. As a fan of the sport, I'd like to see him in Chicago, just because it'd be fun to see twice a year Rodgers Wilson matchups, and it just gives some more competition in the North, because as we talked about in previous episodes, Rodgers is definitely the standout quarterback aside from Dalton, Goff, and Cousins in the North. So if you throw Russell Wilson into the mix there instead, it makes it a little bit more competitive. But obviously, where Russ is going to go with probably a few more weapons, I'd still kind of lean Chicago, although the Raiders do have some young talent there that's starting to flourish. In your Josh Jacobs, Darren Waller, a great tight end, top 5 tight end. past couple of years. So Russell has some weapons out in Vegas as well, but yeah, like I said, it'd be interesting to see once the draft comes if some other teams can put together a package and go get them. Of course, there's a lot of teams in the NFL, so we could literally break down every single team and see, oh, that makes sense for Russ to go there. But I'd rather let it play out and kind of let all the other teams basically make moves that show, oh, they might be putting together something to go get them, or these teams are obviously all in on the quarterback they have. So, I mean, it's getting close to April. Next month is the draft, so kind of the end of April. I feel like we'll be able to circle back to this topic and get a better idea of where he's going to land.
Yeah, and a quick little thing here. I personally feel like now that the Eagles are in the mix, I feel they're going to make something happen to where they swap Hurts, Wilson, maybe a couple picks, maybe another weapon, a Deshaun Jackson, maybe later in his career who could still make some plays when he's healthy. I could see them Seattle doing that per change because Hurts and Russell kind of play that same style, running, passing. Hurts is a little bit bigger, younger. Hey, let's just change QBs, give us a couple more things, and you can go have Russ. It'd be an upgrade for Russ too. I don't know how much actually because their O-line isn't the greatest either. Look at their court. Wentz has taken a beating when he was there.
Mm-hmm. I feel like Wentz's issue though too is he doesn't make decisions fast enough, where he stands in the pocket too long and doesn't get through his reads fast enough. So that's why he's taking a beating. And kind of going off what you said about Russ earlier, since he's been in the league, he's been in the top 3 of getting sacked aside from 2 years. Russ has that better intuition, the better scrambling than Wentz did. So even with, I mean, I'd have to look at the exact roster of apples to apples with the Seattle and the Eagles line, but I feel like just off the bat, Jason Kelsey, that's already an upgrade to have him under center. And looking at the Seattle line, I can't think of anybody who notable to even talk about. So just off the top of my head, the Eagles line seems like an upgrade, although like you said, Wentz has had issues getting hit in the past. So yeah, if the Eagles can go out themselves, if Seattle doesn't want to go out and get a line to make their line better, they could kind of throw that little shade and be like, hey Russ, we made our line better, come out here. So it'd be kind of interesting with that as well.
Yeah, and a quick little point on the Wentz thing, or a question, I should say. Do you think that it's just he's too slow to make reads, or do you think he has the same issue almost Andrew Luck did, where he's got to make a game-changing play every single time he's got the ball in his hands, to where he's trying to make something happen when it just isn't there, when other quarterbacks will just throw it away, check it down right away, where he tries to kind of play superhuman ball out there and do too much where he's taking that abuse on his body.
Yeah, I guess kind of looking at the way Wentz has played throughout his career, it reminds me of the year after Rodgers came back from his last knee injury. He was playing kind of scared. And how we kind of we were giving Rodgers shit that year. You just throwing the ball away too much, not making very good decisions. And then aside from that, trying to go out and be the hero and make hero plays, which is pretty much to achieve what you just described Wentz as. So I think it's just a matter of Wentz coming back confident. It's going to help with him playing in a dome, takes the elements out of the game, makes it just more of a controlled environment. He has a really good line. He has a really good defense to back him up. He has some weapons. So maybe Wentz goes out and doesn't play scared anymore. He's not running for his life. He has some reliable weapons to go to. So I could see Wentz kind of, I don't know if I'd put him in the MVP conversation right away. Although a couple weeks in, it'll be like, oh, this is a new guy. But I could kind of see him doing a similar thing like Rodgers did this year, where 2 years ago he's kind of playing scared and timid and making decisions he usually doesn't make. And now he just got that mindset of not playing scared anymore and went out and balled out and had an MVP season. So, yeah, definitely a good step for Wentz, but I think that's what he needs to do to move forward, to just stop playing scared and trust his intuition, trust his weapons that he has and his coaches around him.
You think all that media shitstorm around Wentz basically his whole career really kind of fucked some things up with getting your confidence going, some new coaches coming in, does the coach trust you, that type of thing? Because it always seems like Wentz off to a great start, gets hurt. Okay, Foles comes in, wins the Super Bowl. They build Foles a statue. Great. They bring Hurts in. They draft him. News is who's going to be QB1. Coaches, Wentz is our guy. Wentz is our guy. During the season, obviously, they made that switch. Like, when they made that switch, I feel like Wentz said, fuck Philly. Find me somewhere. Like, get me out of here. Like, he has come out publicly, he loves Hurts, loves the Eagles, everything like that. Obviously, as all professional athletes should do, is should be thankful for what opportunities that they did get when they had them. But now that he's in Indy, I just feel you're going to see a new quarterback. We're finally going to get to see what he's really got behind that good O-line, and he's got some weapons, like you said, great defense. So now that he's on a better team overall, we're really going to get to see what Carson Wentz has got.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I said, I don't want to throw his name in the MVP talk, but like I said, so all it takes is some guys for a change of scenery and just buying into a new system, and they pop off. So it'd be nice to see him get thrown into the MVP conversation this coming year, just because he's kind of been. It seems like he's the last couple of years. It's like, he's one more injury, one more year, one more bad game away from not getting the nod again. So hopefully he makes the best of it. If he goes in there and lays an egg, then it goes to show it something's not right there, whether it's confidence or mentally, or he's not the player we thought. Because, like we said, we went through all the boxes of being on a better team in Indy, and if he can't make the best of it, then ultimately that's his issue.
Yeah, 100%. And then sticking with quarterbacks in the NFL, Jimmy G. Been some talks about him pretty much all offseason, what San Francisco is going to do with him. Now that they went and got that third pick, everybody's pretty sure that's going to be Justin Fields. Obviously, no one really knows. You can only assume at this point. Kind of looking at what they're going to do, I could see them taking Fields, and then like when Jimmy Garoppolo got traded to San Francisco, kind of that same thing where he didn't start right away when he got there. He sat behind whoever was quarterback at that time for 5 weeks or so, got the playbook under his belt, and they let him go, full go. Do you see them potentially doing something like that with a Fields, where they move him into QB1, Jimmy G goes to QB2, kind of the mentor guy, and then work on moving him after the season is over with healthy?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a good move, and I think that's a kind of a trend that a lot of teams do now is bring the young guy in and have him be mentored under a vet. And I think like you said, having it a handful of games or halfway through the season where you give Fields the nod and bring Jimmy G down. By doing that as well, and unfortunately it happens every single year, it's just a matter of figuring out who it's going to be. Some big name player gets hurt, whether it's like an ACL tear or breaking a leg or whatever it might be, and they're out for the year. So by San Francisco doing that, if it ends up being a quarterback, say a quarterback tears his ACL, a starter somewhere, that's going to make Jimmy G's stock go up, because now they're going to be like, hey, you've seen what he can do. He's been to multiple NFC championships. He's been to a Super Bowl. Like, that makes his stock go up to where they have bargaining power in a trade to send him somewhere. So, like I said, it's just going to be a matter of what team that happens to throughout the season. Obviously, if it's a quarterback, it makes the most sense where they're like, oh, crap, their next quarterback is a fourth-round draft pick who hasn't – he's played a couple times in the preseason. Aside from that, he hasn't really shown a lot of promise. Who's a QB2 on a roster right now who could come in and jump right in and get it done? And Jimmy G is definitely one of those guys right now. So that's kind of where I see him landing if they do decide to get rid of him. Otherwise, just to kind of keep him as a mentor, if he's willing to step into that role. Nowhere in an NFL contract does it say, oh, if we bring in a new guy in 2 years, you have to stay and mentor him and give him all your knowledge and teach him the moves. It doesn't say that at all. Obviously, it's a good team move because you want your team to succeed, but ultimately, he wants to be on the field earning his money, not sitting on the bench watching it happen. So that's kind of where I weigh in on that.
Yeah, 100% agree with everything that you said there. It's important for a quarterback, I feel like, not to reveal all your tricks to the guys underneath you because maybe they are a little bit better at some things that you're not, and they get the nod and they end up beating you out for something. For instance, a little speculation here. Bill Belichick, fucking mastermind, right? Do you think them signing Cam Newton? Okay, so let's just start from the beginning. They went out, spent a fuck ton of money in free agency, overhauled their team, basically, revamped the whole entire thing. Signed Cam Newton to a 1-year deal. Jimmy G gets signed to he's on the last year of his contract, I believe.
I would say so. You can keep talking. I'll look it up, and as soon as I find it.
So he's coming towards the end, whatever. He might just be on a 1-year, or this is the last year of his franchise. Bill Belichick, knowing that, revamping the team, do you think Bill Belichick already has it lined up with the Niners? Season's over, or whenever they move on from Jimmy, give him back. And this is kind of a test run to see what else kind of weapons they need for when they do bring Jimmy G in to get back to being at the top of the AFC.
Yeah, and just to confirm as well, he has 2 years left. So he has this year and the next year on his contract, and then he's a free agent. But yeah, and I believe I think we briefly touched on this a couple episodes or two, as far as kind of that the Patriots kind of in the shadows watching this all go down. They're revamping their team. And I guess in this scenario, kind of like the scenario I gave as far as a quarterback going down due to injury, maybe Cam Newton is putting up shitty numbers in the first couple of weeks of the year. That could be their incentive to go out and get Jimmy G and bring him back as well, which I guess applies to any team. If any team is having their quarterback go out and do shitty, they look to see who's available on the market around the NFL. So yeah, it's definitely interesting. Like you said, Bill Belichick being a mastermind. Obviously, everything that's happened over the last couple of weeks with free agency and him spending millions of dollars, and just going crazy. He's already has it planned out where he knows 6 months, 8 months down the road, week 2, week 4, week 10, and like down the season, having his cards fall right to where if this happens, boom, we're gonna go do that. He just seems like that guy that's 10 steps ahead of a lot of other coaches in the league as far as it being a game of chess for him, and he kind of has everything figured out. So, but at the same time, he's quiet about it. He doesn't make it very public on what his moves are going to be until you see it happen. Like they spend like 160 million in 4 hours that one day.
Yeah, about that.
There was no the days leading up to that, there wasn't any, oh, there's rumors about the Patriots making big moves in free agency. Let's see who they sign. There wasn't a peep about it, and it just, boom, all happened in one day. Because, again, Belichick's always been really good about keeping his decisions behind closed doors. So if it's something that happens as far as him going after Jimmy G, I feel like it's not going to be something very publicized. It's just going to be something all of a sudden one day, boom, they went out and got him, and we're obviously looking back at this conversation, be like, oh, we were right. We kind of made a good assumption about that. But the rest of the sports world, it might come out of left field to them. So, but again, we'll talk about that when that time comes. If he does end up moving, or if he ends up being a QB1 or a QB2 in San Francisco.
Yeah, and then I know how you briefly touched on Urban Meyer saying that Trevor Lawrence is the for sure number one guy that they're going to go take, with the Zach Wilson, I believe his name is, and Justin Fields, who's the guy out of North Dakota, Trey Lance. Who do you truly think, just off of pure intuition and just get like pure eye test what you think, who do you think is going to be the most successful quarterback?
I mean, just off of like it's always hard to tell because depending on a team that they go to, they could either puts a cap on their potential or there's no ceiling for them depending on the system they go into. The trend that the NFL is kind of going is instead of bringing in a guy and making him buy into the system and walk and talk a certain way, they just kind of let the floodgates open and see what these young guys can do. So I definitely like that. So long as they all have that same opportunity, I mean, kind of looking at his pro day, Zach Wilson just looks phenomenal. He was making some amazing throws that like some of these other quarterbacks, like even Mac Jones, he's not really in the conversation quite yet, but just in comparison to watching him make throws to other quarterbacks on their pro days, he's just making throws happen that like falling back on one foot, scrambling to the opposite side of the field, getting it across, and the literally the receiver just runs their route and the ball lands in their lap. Obviously, they're going to be professional athletes, so that should happen across the board. But it just looks more effortless to him. And out of the guys in the draft, Zach Wilson's a smaller guy. Fields, Mac Jones, and Lawrence are all bigger than Zach Wilson. So the fact that he's a smaller guy with a little bit better arm talent, that's obviously great to see on his part.
Yeah, he's definitely a great young talent. I personally think that Justin Fields is just incredible. I feel he's got like that Aaron Rodgers type arm where he can just snap it in there with the flick of the wrist. Perfect accuracy. He's kind of got that Cam Newton style, little thicker bit of a body, more built, and he's fast. He is fast. I feel ever since I've seen that kid on, I believe that was called Quarterback One on Netflix back when he was in high school, you could just see how good the kid was going to be. I mean, sky was the limit for how he was moving. I know he had a couple injuries. He banged his knee up in high school and was out a little while. I do believe he did get hurt at Ohio State for a little bit, whether it was super serious or not. I know that he did continue to play. We saw him play hurt, and what he did hurt was
he had broken ribs, didn't he? He played in the championship with broken ribs.
Yeah, I do believe that. He went out and threw a handful of touchdowns and still played unbelievable. I mean, the kid's got grit. He's got guts. He's got the talent to be phenomenal. I think he's the one I feel like that's going to do the best.
So kind of going off of that again, we're like looking at these quarterbacks theoretically based on no matter what team they land on. What team do you think it is? San Francisco? So like obviously it's trending looking towards San Francisco, but if say that San Francisco didn't have the number 3 pick, what system do you see Justin Fields succeeding in if it isn't San Francisco?
I could see him fitting in the more of a shotgun play action type style that you see kind of in Seattle, a little bit more run heavy, but kind of when they do go, I mean, they don't really put a cap on the quarterback. Like the quarterback can kind of make plays happen when they make them happen. But I feel like he does very well when he has a complementary run game where he can get those play actions and with his speed can get back around and his throwing ability, how he can throw off one leg and stuff like that. Similar to what Rodgers does and is so good at extending the play past a certain amount of time where the defensive guys just gassed and your wide receivers finding that open spot and boom, first down, moving the chains. I could see him doing – obviously I don't think Seattle is where he will end up, but I feel like he would do very well in a system that has a good run game, maybe even Minnesota. I mean, Dalvin Cook back there. I mean, I'd like to see him end up on a team that has a good run game so that he can really do what he does.
So kind of one team to throw into that mix too, not a heavy not a run heavy team, but has some amazing offensive weapons. the Atlanta Falcons. They got Julio Jones, you got Calvin Ridley, um, Todd Gurley, who is a phenomenal running back on the Rams. Maybe he just needs a younger guy to come in and he'd get more reps that way as Justin Fields learns the system. Maybe Gurley gets some more reps to help him kind of get the wheels back on and get going again. And the Falcons are just at the number 4 pick. So if San Francisco doesn't take him at number 3, do you see the Falcons going after him at number 4?
I could definitely see them snagging a guy like Fields, a guy who can come in and be a leader right off the start, who's got the experience of playing at a high level for a long time. I mean, playing at Ohio State, they're in the college football playoff every single year, it seems like. They battle it out with those top teams. And yeah, I feel like it'd be a no, unless they have their eye on another quarterback like the Zach Wilson or Mac Jones, somebody else that's out in left field that they think might be a better fit for their system. But just off of pure talent, raw talent, and playing ability, it'd be a no-brainer. You got to take Fields.
Yeah, and like you said too, if they are still all in on Matty Ice for still 1 or 2 more years, whatever his contract looks like. Sometimes in the draft, it's not about going after who you need on your team. It's all about going after the most valuable player to make moves down the road. So yeah, I feel like at that point, I don't see Justin Fields falling out of the top 5 for that reason of either the team needing him. I guess San Francisco and excuse me, San Francisco and Atlanta both could use Justin Fields right now to throw him into a system. And even if that's not the way they are looking in the draft, I could still see either of the teams taking him to try to make moves to get more players to fit their team better as well. So, kind of sticking with college football, and kind of an interesting trending thing. And for those of you that follow the Michigan State story, as far as them kind of taking away the Spartans name and it's Michigan State presented by Rocket Mortgage, the Iowa football program is kind of taking a similar approach. So they have 2 people who own, I believe it's called Interstate 80. It's a big corporation, multi-million-dollar corporation. Will and Renee Moon just recently donated $10 million to the Iowa football program. And in turn, Iowa, and now the head coach will be labeled as the Moon family head football coach, will be his title. So it'll be interesting to see moving forward if they revamp and rename some other titles. They're kind of reading the article I did. There wasn't any talk about them getting rid of the Hawkeyes name, which, I don't think they should. I think every team should still have a mascot, or it shouldn't be like the Iowa Moons named after this family or anything like that. But obviously $10 million is a huge check to write to this program. I know like half of it was going towards equipment and like field operations, like 2 million of it was going towards giving more seating in a certain end zone, and then the other 3 million, I can't remember what it was for. But obviously it's great to have wealthy individuals donate to some of these football programs or just sport programs in general, but I don't think it should come to the point where it's an obligation to change your coaching positions, your mascots. It's cool to have like the field name after them, where it's like a lot of times you have so and so field at blank stadium. Like that's always cool to see based on donations or whatever it might be. Yeah, I guess how do you weigh in on that as far as kind of this being the second team to kind of move forward as far as changing their names based on sponsorships or donations?
I've always wondered how long it was going to take for the college world, especially, to get to this point, due to how the boosters heavily run basically all of the athletic programs through all of the major colleges. Don't get me wrong, some of the smaller schools that don't have those boosters that are donating the 10, 50, $100 million to do things, obviously their schools are spending the money, as every school does on that, just the schools that have the Alabamas, think of how much influence is outside of outside of the internal football operations that, hey, Nick Saban, you're going to do this, you're going to get this guy, because otherwise the money's going to stop, and that money stops, your facilities turn to shit. You know what I mean? Like, once you got a well-oiled machine going, you can't just hit the brakes and stop all of that. Otherwise, you're going to go 50 years backwards. Michigan State and now Iowa being the second team, both in the Big Ten that have done this. I'm going to guess that the trend's going to continue in the Big Ten, and you're going to see some other Big Ten schools jump on board with that. I don't think that now Michigan State, correct me if I'm wrong, was it just their basketball team that was changed, or was it the entire
It
school
was
motto?
just their basketball team. I think the
Okay.
football team or the head of football operations came out and said that we are not changing our name. So like you just said, I'm pretty sure it's just the basketball program that it's affecting. But still, it starts somewhere. It starts small and it eventually gets bigger as maybe more money comes in, more influence and stuff like that. So yeah, all it takes is one little crack to get it going, and next thing you know, it's broke wide open. And like you said, the trend of two teams being in the Big Ten, one I'll mention as well, especially being fans of like Wisconsin football. American Family Insurance is out of Madison, Wisconsin. They have kind of a heavy presence in the area. If there's a company that comes out and kind of makes that same push, like Rocket Mortgage or this Moon Family, I could kind of see American Family Insurance doing the same thing, especially in Milwaukee now. It's not going to be Miller Park starting next year. It's going to be American Family Insurance Park. So again, money talks. Obviously, if American Family Insurance has the money to, if they want to have a presence in the Wisconsin football or basketball or just Wisconsin athletics in general, have a presence there. If there's another Big Ten team that does it, I could see Wisconsin leaning that way and that being their sponsor.
Yeah, I guess it really determines on how deep that booster money goes. How much is outside of schools / the program's hands due to, like, Wisconsin, for example. I feel like, granted, I don't know any of this information, but I feel like just being a spectator and a resident in Wisconsin, being a lifelong Badger fan, it almost seems like you have your ups and your downs with your sports, depending on your recruiting classes that you're getting coming through, due to the fact that that's just how it is the right way in college sports. Obviously, you're not having the best class come there every single year. Like, teams that like load up like Kansas, Duke, all those schools for basketball, that's really the only basketball is almost like the only sport where you see the top guys coming there every single year, besides football for Alabama or Ohio State. Like, the powerhouses kind of have those top teams, but it almost seems like every other school, like you had said, is it going to be, or like we said, is it going to be other teams in the Big Ten, or is it going to spread nationwide? I really think it just determines on how deep that outside influence goes within a program.
Yeah, and just kind of a side note on this as to kind of the timing of it with Michigan State and Iowa. Again, with COVID making a lot of sports programs, both collegiate and professional, take a hit. Does that have an influence on why some of these teams are doing this, where they're hurting for money? So they're like, yes, we like allowing them to change their titles and the names of their programs around, because now they're getting these millions back that they lost over the past year, like year and a half.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe the schools still had their kids paying tuition and all this during
Oh yeah,
all of that time. So I don't see how they've really lost any money besides television, as far as that goes in the sports, because that's really ticket sales you lose out, but all that is supposed to be going back to the school, right? To pay the teachers, pay the coaches, pay whatever. So the university's money, went down a little bit, I feel like, but I really don't feel like, I feel like it's just due to them not being able to be on television. Because like we just said, kids are still paying to go to school. when COVID was, when you're going to class from home, nothing like that world didn't stop. Like college is a cash cow. You know what I mean? They're just gonna keep, and it's just gonna keep going up and up and up. And that's why all these places are able to afford all these new facilities, and the top stays at the top. It keeps separating more and more and more. But is it on the conference too? Like, is it on the manager of that conference to step in and say, hey, you're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to do this. Okay, you could do this. You could do that. Because, like, all the California schools, they seem like very nice. All, like, they're very good at sports, like, a lot of the time. Multiple different sports you see California teams competing in, where Midwest, you really only kind of have football, which is normally Ohio State, hockey, which is normally Wisconsin, Minnesota. You know, there's only a couple sports where the Big Ten actually competes in, compared to these other states and these other conferences who are in it in every single sport, like competing at the top.
Yeah, I mean, that like two conferences are sicko are like the SEC and the ACC are kind of like the other two that just seem to dominate everything. Like SEC, Alabama is really good, always amazing at football. Even like baseball, softball programs in the South. And now Alabama, they just got knocked out 2 days ago, but their basketball program took a huge turn this year. And obviously the ACC too, with like Clemson and then Notre Dame kind of being affiliated, but still who knows what conference they're in kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, obviously like the ACC, Big Ten, SEC are like your main three conferences. But that's also a disadvantage for the Big Ten being in the North is like, for instance, I know like when I attended University of Wisconsin Oshkosh, their first for the baseball team, their first month and a half of the year, they're playing down in Missouri, Alabama, Arkansas, because we still had a foot of snow on the ground up here, so they couldn't play up here. So it goes to show how a lot of these programs down south really have it year round to where they're able to keep their facilities open, keep games going, even like intramurals, stuff like that. That's around the clock. Whereas some of your northern states, some of that either has to get pushed back or moved to different facilities, which also costs more money to build up and operate. So yeah, just kind of like what you're going off of as far as kind of the three main conferences that kind of run this show in the NCAA.
Yeah, it's just so crazy to see that year after year after year, almost nothing changes with the same teams being relevant and the same teams not. Granted, you did get to see with this bubble type atmosphere where everybody is getting kind of that same treatment. Different things can happen. Like, you still got an 11 seed alive, I believe, in the tournament. So when the outside elements aren't heavily involved, you don't really have it's almost not a fair fight.
Yeah, especially for these smaller schools where they get a champion or a tournament berth for the first time in decades. You're gonna have everybody show up that support that college, but in this bubble atmosphere where it's limited, or in some facilities maybe they don't allow spectators at all or whatever it might be, you're hurting. Like, those smaller schools need that lift up of their spectators and their fans to be able to have a shot against some of these bigger programs. So yeah, like you said, it kind of takes that element out and makes it a little less fair. And because it's a controlled environment, obviously the bigger, more physical, faster, more favored team is going to win in a controlled environment versus a smaller team that needs some hiccups, some different things to go their way. But if it's all to a T controlled, they don't have that luxury.
Right. Like, just speaking of which, sticking with college sports, switching over to the hoops and March Madness that's going on right now. Gonzaga, only sport that they're really ever relevant in is basketball, men's and women's. They're always at the top. Them still being perfect and them being a powerhouse for basketball, that's a prime example of a university that's, all in on the basketball and kind of mediocre everywhere else across the board.
Yeah, it's I'm trying to think of another program that was kind of like that. I mean, Alabama football, that was kind of the same thing. They've always been in on football, and that's been it.
Well, their women's softball is pretty good too.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think of another program. Isn't Stanford is it like their swimming program really good or something? I'm trying to.
And they're always pretty good at volleyball, I believe, and
Mhm.
softball as well.
So it's just it'll be kind of nice to see. It's nice to see this trend again, and I just briefly talked about it a minute ago with Alabama, kind of their basketball team making strides. It's nice to see these programs. I mean, a good example, I guess, of that is Wisconsin. Their hockey program has always been really good. Their basketball program has kind of taken a little bit of a lull, but 5 to 10 years ago was phenomenal. Their football program always starts out good and then shits the bed to an unranked team every year. But um, I feel like women's softball is usually decent. Women's volleyball is they're usually ranked. So just to be ranked in D1 sports is an accomplishment. Um, so it's kind of one of those programs that I think their rowing team is actually really good too, which is kind of out there. But again, it's nice to see a university have their eggs in multiple baskets to where, I mean, hockey is really the only one that consistently wins championships, the women's side, at least. But it's nice to see them being competitive in all these other ones where maybe they don't make it to the championship, but they're in the top 10 every year. I'd rather watch that than, all right, Alabama football this year, and you got this so many month window, and then outside of that, there isn't really a whole lot going on. It's nice to see these basically a university have programs that stay competitive, men's and women's, multiple sports all year round.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's good to see great competition, especially when it's spread out. Sports are a spectator sport. It's for entertainment. Obviously, the people who are playing it are playing to try to move on to that next level, make money, do that type of thing, make it a profession. But the people who are watching it want to just see people trying their absolute best and great competition on both sides, battling it out and going at it. And speaking of which, the Oregon State Beavers still alive in the tournament, taking on Houston tonight. Who do you think is going to take that home?
I mean, I keep betting against Oregon State, and they keep winning. I think since round 2, I keep betting against them, saying, "Oh, they're going to get crushed. This going to happen?" So, because as you'd mentioned, so I have it pulled up here. So Oregon State is a number 12 playing a number 2, and then the other high seed is UCLA is a number 11 playing Michigan, who's a number 1. Otherwise, it's a 1 and a 6 and a 3 and a 1, which is kind of to be expected. So, I mean, obviously, you like to see those Cinderella stories, those upsets keep happening over and over and over. So, just so I don't jinx myself, I'm going to say Houston, but in the back of my head, I want Oregon State to win. Um, I mean, look, I don't have like statistics pulled up or anything on it as far as like head to head of like field goal percentage and defense and turnovers and all that. Which at this point, I feel like none of that really matters because it's a fresh slate every game. You could almost eliminate all these ranks except for maybe Gonzaga. You could put basically the way I look at it is every other team is a 2 seed and Gonzaga's a 1 right now. Is kind of the way to look at it. So yeah, in the back of my head, I want Oregon State to win, but like I said, I keep picking against them and they win, so I'm going to say Houston.
All right, all right. I personally am going to take Oregon State after watching the games this weekend. It was a busy weekend of watching games. Granted, there was a handful of blowouts, so I definitely got to get a good nap in. But other than that, the games that were competitive were very good games. Oregon State's lengthy. They move fast. I mean, Houston's a great team, too. They shoot very well from the floor. It's going to be a tight game, but I feel like the Beavers of Magic is going to continue to go, and I feel like they're going to make a Final Four appearance.
All right. And for the other game going on today, tomorrow's episode will break down the other two. and kind of recap how the 2 games went today. We have number 3 Arkansas and number 1 Baylor. Where are you kind of leaning with that one?
Gonna lead the Bears, Baylor Bears. The last game that they played was probably one of the worst games that I've seen a team play, and they still managed to win. They get things going at this point. I do believe that we did talk about how they missed a lot of games due to COVID during the year, so they kind of were at their midseason form going into the tournament. The first 2 games, beating Wisconsin, they didn't play well. Their second round game, they looked a little better, and then their last game where they just looked completely awful. I feel like they're still figuring some things out. If they can get it all going and firing on all cylinders, I see them having no problem against Arkansas. However, if they continue to come out and struggle, Arkansas is going to put them away. Arkansas is a very good team, and it's basically up to Baylor. Are they going to show up and play, or are they going to continue to have those miscues, turnovers, struggles that you'd see mid-season from a team?
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree. And thinking back to the Wisconsin game they played, they ended up winning by double digits. I think it was like 14, if I remember correctly, that Baylor won by. And it was just a very high turnover, low scoring percentage game. But even as Baylor struggled, they looked amazing. Like they looked good compared to Wisconsin. So like you said, they continue to come out and have their miscues here and there and continue to win games. And I believe last week we talked about if there's a team that is going, if Baylor puts all their stuff together and can play flawless games down the stretch, I think they're going to be the only team that can give Gonzaga a run for their money. If it's anybody else other than Baylor and Gonzaga in the national championship, you can basically write it off as Gonzaga winning it. So yeah, hopefully the last 3 games here, if they make it to the championship, if they can get it all straightened out and figured out. Yeah, I like Baylor in that matchup as well. Yeah, and then for the other 2 games, we'll dive into them tomorrow and kind of recap how the 2 games tonight went. I know. Go ahead.
Real quick, back to the NFL. I think we forgot to talk about this. How about that 17th game?
That's what I was just about to bring up.
Yeah, how's that 17th game being added in? What are your thoughts on that? Like,
I mean, I know there's been a handful of players, Alvin Kamara kind of being the big one that sticks out as far as being displeased with it. And I guess it comes down to the analytics. Obviously, the players would know more as far as incentives. If they play the full season, are they going to get paid more, or is it going to be kind of like a where instead of getting paid $2 million over 16 games, they're getting paid $2 million over 17. So their paychecks are going to be a little less. Obviously, if there's players displeased with it off the bat, I'm sure there's still going to be meetings and negotiations behind closed doors from the Players Association to make sure that the players are satisfied with it. I think, like from my perspective, I think it's a good move just to add a 17th game and either and try to deplete the preseason a little bit. So kind of one of the formats I've seen is 17 game schedule, 2 games in the preseason instead of 4, which I think is good because you always see every year, thinking back, can't remember exactly what year it was, but Jordy Nelson tearing his ACL in a freaking preseason game and his year was done. You always hate to see that, see players get injured in a preseason game that really doesn't mean anything for those who kind of watch preseason games. It's like, what's going on here? Essentially, it's for the coaches to decide their roster, what their roster looks like. The number one strings, do they need to be out there? No, but they're more or less out there because they're itching to get back out there, and they're going to be a little rusty, so they want to get their groove back together with their other starters. So that's basically the only reason they're out there. Aside from that, roster spots 2 through 6 or 7, depending on the depth of the position. It's more or less them fighting to get a roster spot, and that's all it is. Because it's a 53-man roster, there's obviously not enough to go off from training camps and practices. They need those head-to-head matchups with other teams to kind of make those decisions. And I think moving it to 2 games, does it make it harder for coaches? Probably, because you have half the amount of games to make your decisions. but at the same time, you're getting rid of injuries on some of these bigger name players. Um, the as far as how they do the 17 game schedule, do they actually play 17 games, or is it just going to be a second bye week? How is that how that goes to kind of keep players rested and fresh to make it better coming into the playoffs? It'll be interesting to see over the offseason how exactly the fundamentals of how it's going to lay out. So to kind of, I guess, from the players' side, I can see their frustration to make sure that they're getting the best out of it. But as a spectator and watching the sport over the years, I think going to a 17-game schedule is a good move.
Yeah, see, I just don't think it's a good move for the NFL. Talking about going from 4 preseason games down to 2, it still doesn't eliminate the chance for a star to get hurt. And you do need your first stringers to take some snaps with these 2 through 6 guys playing to make sure that these guys can even handle making it if they even do get to that level. Like, you need routers out there throwing balls to a guy that might be the 6th receiver on the squad to see if he can catch a ball. Because if you need him in that moment, he's got to be able to step up into that role and compete and still be able to do his job. So I feel like you at least need 3 preseason games. The first, how they do it is great. Like Rodgers especially, he normally takes a couple snaps, done. And he usually just hands the ball off. He doesn't really throw much, unless he wants to. I feel like players' discretion, they should almost throw the red jersey on the quarterback. Can't smoke the dude. And you're out there basically showcasing your skills because just to see if you can fit in that, because that's basically what coaches are looking for. The 1s are basically guaranteed. The 2s are almost guaranteed. It's more the 3 through 6 spot that guys are fighting for to be on the roster. And then rumor has it, with that 17th game coming in, there's not an extra bye week. And that's why most players are pretty pissed off about taking another game's worth of beating on top of what you're already having to take, probably making less money because your salary is going to get spread out even more thin because you add another week. So all your checks are going to get less unless however they decide to do that last week's worth of pay. But 9-7 is now 10-7. And that's shit, dude. That ain't a good record. You know what I mean?
No.
You're gonna have to be 11-6, 12-5. Like these bubble teams, how it works out now with the 16 games, an even number with that 17th game is really gonna mess things up with how the standings work. What people consider a good season, an average season, all that is gonna change. Because 8-8 is at 500. There will be no even 500 mark anymore.
No. And I guess the big question too is how is that extra, who do you play with that extra game? Is it a division rival? Is it somebody in your conference? Is it somebody in the other conference? That's a big game changer too, especially down the stretch of some if you're on the bubble in the NFC, obviously losing to an AFC team would be better than losing to an NFC team because either that gives the NFC team more of a lead or it lets the team below you move up. So that kind of, again, it's going to make a huge difference as far as who they play. I doubt they put somebody in the division just because you already play your division team 6 games out of the year. Plus, at that point, how do you decide who the extra game is going to be against? I mean, looking at the AFC West, no team wants to play the Chiefs 3 times a year. You know what I mean? So it's and that's the one thing too I haven't seen as far as how they're going to decide what team you're going to play with that extra game. It could be situational. Maybe it's a game that comes in at the end of the year. Yeah, it's such a new topic, and there's still a lot of meetings going on behind closed doors. So we just kind of sit and wait to see what happens. But I guess, like I said, kind of starting with this topic, players are displeased with it. So obviously, whatever parameters they're starting with, the players aren't happy with.
Yeah, and I just did a quick little dive into it to see if there's any details released on that as we've been going over the podcast, as since there wasn't really anything specific out there earlier this morning. It looks like about an hour or two ago, Warren Sharp of Sharp Football Analysis reports from Insider News that it looks like there's going to be no extra bye week. Week 1 is the first regular season Sunday, which would be September 12th, the week after Labor Day weekend. Week 18 would be the final regular season Sunday on January 9th. Super Bowl Sunday would be February 13th, a week before President's Day weekend. Wild Card weekend, we'll have 2 games Saturday, January 15th, and 3 games on Sunday, the 16th, and also 1 game on Monday, the 17th. It looks like players aren't really feeling what's going on. I know as far as having home and away games affecting teams' ability to make money is definitely a factor in this whole thing as well, as it looks like 16 teams will have 10 home games, 8 regular season and 2 preseason, while the other 16 teams will have 10, but in a different format, whether that might be 9 regular season, 1 preseason, however that goes. But there is potential for a strike, I would imagine, that could potentially be possible out of all this. If you get enough players on board with not wanting, or if the conditions just don't seem to be fair or right.
Yeah, I guess I didn't even think about that as far as a strike. I mean, and this is the early talk of it. So obviously, if the NFL keeps in the trend of where they're going with it, and the NFLPA is not happy with their end of it, I could definitely see a strike coming out of it. Just because, I mean, obviously the NFL is making this move because it means more money in their pocket because you have that many more games on TV, so the NFL is getting that much more money. So the players obviously want a piece of that, but they're not, from what it seems like. It seems like they're getting spread more thin. Not having an extra bye week means more susceptible to injuries. Um, from the way you made it sound for Wild Card Weekend, there's games Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. So if I'm playing on Monday, I'm pissed because I have less rest than the Saturday and Sunday teams. There's just so much that goes into it that, I mean, it's only March, so they really got 4 or 5 months before OTAs and training camp starts to figure this out. But I mean, at the same time, for a big decision like this, that's a small window to make sure both sides are happy. So, like you said, I could see a strike coming out of this if changes aren't made properly.
Yeah, and I also don't know if I mentioned too, it looks like what I said is actually looks like what they're planning to do is go down to 3 preseason games.
Okay.
It looks like that is what's going to be the thing. And then also that new television contract that they signed doesn't kick in until 2023. So
With
the league
ESPN and ABC.
yeah, so the league is expected to alter all current deals and all that sort of thing with adding in the game, however they want to work it out. They got their money guys that take care of all that stuff. So I'm sure they're working around the clock trying to put something together to get the players to say, okay, we'll do it. But in early talks, it looks like the players are leaning towards no.
Yeah. I mean, good for them. Obviously, they're essentially the ones that make the money happen. If you take the players out of the NFL, you have a bunch of old guys with millions and billions of dollars. Like, the players are what makes it happen. So obviously, I mean, they ultimately have the say in what happens. And if it takes a strike and the NFL losing millions of dollars by the day, if the season starts and games aren't happening, the favor goes towards the players, and the NFL says, "All right, what do we got to do to make this happen?" And hopefully, there's a good compromise there that they can make it happen. But yeah, I guess to kind of finish up NFL talk and then kind of start to wrap things up here. two kind of free agency moves. Jaron Reed went to the Chiefs on a 1-year deal and up to $7 million in incentives, and then a big move for the Ravens as well as they look to improve their passing game. They signed Sammy Watkins to a 1-year deal as well. That's kind of all I have for NFL talk today.
Yeah, and it also looks like as we were live on the pod, the Colts add depth to their offensive line, signing Joey Hunt and Julian Davenport to help Wentz up there in Indy. Looks like they're making moves to try to see Wentz at his full potential. Also, some breaking news as well. Ex-coach Hugh Jackson from the Cleveland Browns is releasing a book, and it looks like he's spilling all the beans about the Cleveland Browns front office and how looks like they had lied multiple times about what they were going to do while he was there as a coach, misleading him in end result him losing his job. Yeah. Did you have anything in the NBA going on?
Yeah, there's a couple moves. Obviously, so the Nets acquired LaMarcus Aldridge, again, another vet. Seems like the Nets just have this endless pit of cash that they keep going into and going out and getting these players. So they just keep building that super team more and more, adding more and more depth to try to go take out the Lakers or the Clippers of the West. And then you'd had somebody getting signed as well, correct?
Yeah, I think that was Drummond to the Lakers.
Oh,
I
yep.
believe. I don't know if that was official or not. What I did read was his agent did say that everything was leaning towards the Lakers acquiring him. I don't know any of the details or anything about that, but looks like they're trying to add a big piece now that LeBron and AD are both still kind of dealing with those injuries and battling through that. How about Zion though? Think he should be in the MVP conversation at this point with what he's been able to do?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of been a trend for him, and obviously being on a lower seeded team like New Orleans, I don't even know where they're at, but I don't even think they're above 500 right now to make the playoffs. So it kind of whenever there's always an MVP conversation, it's rarely a team that's in the bottom half that gets put that you have a player in the conversation, which can kind of suck. And in the case of Zion, who's been constantly putting up amazing stats, 70, 80, 90% from the field, just about every game. So he's amazingly efficient. Majority of his points coming from the paint as he just dominates their game after game. And especially at the young caliber that he's at, some players from his draft class or even a year older are still figuring it out. For instance, looking at Lonzo, who's the draft class ahead of him, he's been kind of a subpar player. I know there's been some people who have talked about him being a very high IQ player and it's just not developing onto the court yet in his skill set, which is, I mean, should probably be said about any player having a high IQ of the game. And that's where the difference makers are, is who can take their knowledge and adapt it to their skills to be amazing players. So yeah, I definitely think Zion's ahead of his time. Obviously, last year he broke some rookie records. He's kind of on pace for some of LeBron's numbers early on in his career. I mean, in my opinion, obviously he should be a part of that MVP conversation, given the crazy numbers he puts up. Again, 80, 90% from the field. That's amazing. Given obviously he's a big guy in the paint, he's taking high percentage shots, but there's the league is full of big players, so obviously it's not easy for him, but he just makes it look easy because he's just that step up. Given the trends and the odds of the NBA MVPs, obviously he's not really in the conversation. But like you said, I think he belongs in that conversation. It's all based on the Pelicans wouldn't be the Pelicans without Zion. Who knows where they'd be at? They'd be probably in the bottom 10 teams of the league, if not worse, without him right now. Ever since they got rid of AD, AD and Zion kind of switched roles where AD was kind of doing everything himself. the Pelicans would get a win if AD balled out. Right now, it kind of looks like the same thing with Zion. So that just screams MVP to me, the most valuable person to their team. The Lakers have proved they can win without LeBron and AD. The Bucks shown that they can win without Giannis. Um, trying to think of other team. The Nets.
Brooklyn's won without all of them.
One, well, all four have yet to take the floor together. But kind of going back to most valuable player to their team, Zion definitely fits the bill for that.
Yeah, and they're sitting right now 12th in the West, 20-25. They're 3.5. Well, with the new playoff format, they're technically only 1.5 games back from the Warrior Golden State, which is in that 10th spot right now. Yeah, Zion's just been unbelievable to watch. I know his last game, he's put up 38 and 39, I do believe, on just crazy shooting numbers, handling the ball like a point guard, just making the moves. Such a young, reminds me of a LeBron-esque when he was young, of just how raw athletic power he's got. And he's just a fun guy to watch. Every time you see him get the ball in his hands, you want him to go just jump over someone and slam it down. But he's kind of already figuring that out like LeBron. It took him a while to figure out that you need to be able to shoot the ball too, because you don't want to just keep pounding and killing your body your whole entire career. And now when you're potentially at the end, I mean, who knows how long LeBron's going to play, but he's getting banged up. I mean, this is probably one of the very few times in his career where he's dealt with an injury that's kept him out for quite a while.
Yeah. And kind of one thing to mention too, like you said, as far as Zion kind of getting it, realizing he has to shoot. And one stat that popped into my head, and I pulled it up here to confirm it, his 3-point shooting is good compared to a lot of other guys. Just for this season, I didn't see as far as his career so far, but he is 34, almost 39% or 35% from the field from 3-point, which is good for a big guy. Again, being that versatile player, obviously being down under the rim, he's constantly putting up high rebounds. Great passer as well, which kind of goes to show that they almost need another guard for him to kind of to take the pressure off of him, which has kind of led to, for example, like Giannis, them acquiring Drew Holiday to have another guy working outside the arc. Every time Giannis or Zion make a break to the basket, you have 2, if not 3 guys kind of turning their head and looking to come down and contest the shot. Zion needs a guy to kick it out to, where he can give a guy a deep mid-range or a 3-point shot to knock down that's wide open. Yeah, it's just, again, such a versatile player. He has a higher probably 3-point percentage than some guards in the league. So, yeah, like we kind of said, he definitely belongs in the MVP conversation, even though whoever puts together those polls of odds and stuff of who belongs to be in the MVP conversation, they're obviously overlooking him.
Yeah, definitely. Did you happen to see, real quick, U.S. men's soccer losing again in not getting into the Olympics? They took the L 2-1. They lost to Honduras over the weekend. A little bit of a slap in the face to U.S. men's soccer right there.
Oh, for sure. And we briefly talked about this yesterday. I believe it was either the last one, if not the last 2 FIFA World Cups, too. They didn't qualify to make it to that. And then I believe that immediately the day after, the head coach got fired. There's some coaching changes. It looked like maybe, maybe some trending in the right direction of them getting back on track. But apparently, I guess not, because as they're not going to be making it to the Olympics this year. So whether there's going to be changes that happen again, kind of sounds like a Detroit Lions kind of thing where they keep bringing in new coaches, new staff, whatever. I don't know how soccer works. If there's a front office, executives kind of thing, maybe that's where the changes need to happen instead of the coaching. But, I mean, some soccer athletes are some of the most amazing athletes in the world. I know soccer isn't really a sport we talk about a lot, but I tell you, look at a soccer field and realize, holy shit, they run up and down this for 90 minutes without stopping. You start to get more of an appreciation for soccer. So obviously well, I shouldn't say obviously it's not the players. It could be partially the players, but I think you got to take a step up from the coaches and look at the executives and how that team is being managed to kind of see where the root of the problem is. Because, I mean,
there's great soccer players in the U.S.
oh
We
yeah,
can find them to go out there and play and win. It's just, like you said, I feel like it's the management organizational part where they need to take a step back and maybe relook at how they're doing things and get the right guys in there to compete and go out there and qualify for our country.
yeah. Yeah, it's always disappointing to see a U.S. team in general not making it for a World Cup or an Olympics or whatever it might be. And yeah, kind of Olympics are still a few months away, like 4 months away. So it'll be interesting to kind of dive into that when the time comes to, and we'll make sure believe it's like a week and a half, 2 weeks that the Olympics happen. That'd probably be a big topic of ours, kind of diving into that, see who's hot, who was outside the top 5 and ended up winning a medal, stuff like that. So, yeah, look forward to diving into that.
Yeah, and then just wrapping up here, I think, just with some hockey news here. Ovechkin did net a couple more goals over the weekend. I believe that's now put him in 5th place all time on catching the great one. He is on fire right now. I believe he scored 10 goals over his last 10, I want to say. Almost seems every single game right now he's finding some way to put the puck in the back of the net. It's great to see somebody sustain this type of goal scoring abilities over this long in his career, especially the way that the game is today, how fast, how skilled every single person is, where to do it night in and night out is just remarkable. So congratulations, Ovi. Keep it going. Some other news as well. Aaron Ekblad, defenseman who potentially is up for Defenseman of the Year. He got his knee caught with a Dallas Stars member, took a weird twist and a fall. Looks like he's going to be out for an extensive period of time, according to their coach, Joe Quenneville. They did put a huge brace on his leg, and they did have to take him off by stretcher. So you really kind of wonder where he's going to go in his career after this. Can he bounce back? I mean, he is getting a little bit older in age. He does log a lot of minutes, and he's a crucial member for Florida Panthers hockey team. Yeah, I mean, hope he gets back. Hope everything goes good and hope everything is well there. Real quick about my Flyers. Elaine Vigneault, who's the head coach, came out and said he is sitting Carter Hart for the next 2 games. He's not even going to be on the bench. He's going to be scratched up in the box. Looks like he just needs to work harder. Coach says he's not working as hard as he should or he likes to see in practice. He wants to see him get back to what he did in the beginning of his career when they first drafted him and signed him, his work habits, and just getting back to stopping the puck. His save percentage so far this year is pretty terrible. I believe it's a .789. So it's not pretty good in his last 3. I mean, he's gotten yanked so many times this year. We've had to see Brian Elliott come in and back him up. The former Badgers, shout out Badgers. The old man, Brian Elliott, he is getting the start. It looks like the next 2 games, and we have the 3rd stringer, Alex Lyon, who's another young goalie that we have on our team. Basically, you'd like to see Carter Hart figure it out. He's a good goaltender. Philly, I know they've been looking for the next goalie to come in and win a Stanley Cup. It's been a long time. I feel he's been feeling the pressure, especially coming in and doing as well as he did his first 2 seasons. People have got that expectation, and I know Philly fans are just ruthless. The expectations that they set is just crazy almost. And for the Flyers to be Stanley Cup or bust, I mean, they got the talent, but clearly talent can't do it alone. They need to scratch basically everything they're doing and step back and get back on the right track again. They've fallen off. I mean, a lot of teams you're starting to see hit COVID waves, injury waves right now. Like the Boston Bruins, I believe they have about 10 guys on their starting roster who are either hurt or in COVID protocol right now. So they're struggling to hang on and find some points to stay alive at the position that they're in right now, currently making the playoffs if the season ended today. But yeah, like I said, Carter Hart, just get back to doing your thing. Don't think too much about it. Just stop the puck, you know what to do. You've been playing hockey your whole life. Sit in the net, do your thing, get us a couple dubs when you get back on the roster. Hopefully that's soon. I really hope that we don't trade you, but also at the same time, it wouldn't be a terrible move to go get a goal scorer or something right now and give up him potentially, as we do have 3 goalies that can play right now. So that's kind of all I got right now for hockey. My Flyers do play tonight. They play the Buffalo Sabres. If they beat them, the Sabres are on a long drought right now of losing. I believe this will be 17 in a row if they lose tonight, which is tying the Pittsburgh Penguins of 0-4 for the longest losing streak. So, yeah, hopefully my Flyers can beat a team that the wheels have kind of fallen off, and get their confidence going to see them make a push back to get in the playoffs. You got anything else before we go here?
I don't think so. That's kind of all I had for today. Yeah, a lot happened over the weekend, so I feel like our Monday episodes are definitely going to be kind of our longer ones, a lot to unpack. So, yeah, kind of big things to look forward to tomorrow. Again, breaking down our the Elite 8 matchups that happen, more Deshaun Watson news maybe that comes out, and then, yeah, opening day for the baseball this week as well. Look forward to unpacking that at the end of the week. See some first pitches and stuff like that. So, yeah, that's all I had for today.
And about our guest, too, we should have some news on that later this week. Maybe that we can drop on maybe just a little bit of information on who's going to be coming on so you can get to know them, look into a little bit of stuff. But hopefully we can get all those details finalized here so we can release that. And, yeah, everybody, hope you guys have a great rest of your day. I mean, that's all I got to say.
Sounds good. All right. See you tomorrow, man.
All right. Have a good one.